Ray Resources is planning to build the first coal mine in the Kimberley region. They propose it to bring many benefits to the community, but environmental groups say it will be a health and safety disaster. I'm talking to Ian Pound, Ray Resources General Manager for the Duchess Paradise project. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Dylan, and hello to the residents of the Fitzroy Valley.
What experience does Ray Resources have in the mining industry?
Ray Resources has been involved in exploration internationally some years ago, but more recently exploration in the Canning Basin since 2008, and also on the board of Ray Resources there are members who have been involved in the development and operation of coal mines.
Where is the exact location of the Duchess Paradise coal mine?
The proposed mine itself is in the vicinity of the Paradise Homestead, which is an old outstation on Liveringa Station that is no longer in use, so around that location.
There are a lot of different ways to mine coal. Could you please explain the mining method that will be used in the Duchess Paradise coal mine and why you use it?
Thank you, Dylan. That's actually a really exciting aspect of the project. Because, as you say, there are many different ways to mine coal. They're chosen because of the type of coal and where it is, but also by the company who's undertaking the mining. And in this case, Ray is choosing two types of mining. For about the first 10 years, it's a method called slot highwall mining, and after that, there's a prospect for another 10 years of deeper underground mining using room and pillar. So we'll talk firstly about the slot highwall mining. That's a fairly innovative mining method, putting together several different mining forms that will minimise the impact on the environment. So in some places people use what is called open cut, where you take the rock at the top and remove that until you get down to the coal, and then you remove the coal, and you often leave a hole in the ground where you have done that. After talking particularly with the traditional owners of that area, the Nigginamungla, we recognised that open cut mining was not the best thing to do there, and we went away and found this mining method where you create a very narrow trench and then you operate what's called a highwall mining machine in the bottom of that trench, and it is able to remove the coal while the overburden above it remains in place. And then as you move along, you place the overburden from ahead of you behind you in the slot so that it is filled in and you don't leave a hole in the ground. The coal here slopes gently down, so the slot and highwall mining is to mine the shallower coal, and then as the coal gets deeper, that method can't be used. So what we're talking about is creating an entrance to an underground mine, and then you take slots out of, you mine out the coal, leaving pillars behind that hold up the roof. So you don't take all of the coal and let the ground collapse. You leave pillars to support the ground above and just take out the coal that won't allow it to collapse.
What benefits will Ray Resources bring to the community through this coal mine?
There are lots and lots of opportunities, and we have been talking with different parties about that for quite a few years, and probably one of the most exciting is that there will be about 300 jobs during the construction of the project, and also about 300 jobs during the operation. And these are opportunities for local people, and including particularly the Indigenous people, to work in the project. There are going to be about 55 jobs at the port end of the operation, and around 85 jobs in the transporting the coal to the port, and then the balance of those 300 are at the mine site. But many of those are not in actual physical mining. They're doing things like running the accommodation camp that is there and the processing plant and things like that. So there's lots of opportunity for truck drivers, for diesel mechanics, for people in the hospitality, running the camp and providing the food for the employees.
What's the proposed figure to get the mine started?
We estimate that to actually start the mine will cost about $200 million, and then of course you have to continue investing capital as you progress the project, and you have your operating costs as well. So about $200 million to start with.
What happens to the mine when it's closed?
One of the great opportunities of the mining methods we've chosen is that we can do what's called progressive closure. So we don't have to wait until the very end of mining and then do everything at the end. We can progressively backfill the slots as we go and be rehabilitating those so that we minimise the amount of disturbance that exists along the way, and we also have the opportunity to refine the rehabilitation and closure and to learn from that so that we make sure we do absolutely the best job we can. So when we have finished and gone away, the ground will be restored and we will have various stages of revegetation growth. Some of it by the end of the 20 years will be probably 15 years old and very, very well established. We've been very pleased with the rehabilitation that occurs on our exploration areas, whereby operating carefully we get the vegetation to regrow very quickly and very effectively, both stabilising the soil and re-establishing the values of that vegetation.
How will coal be transported from mine to port?
Our proposal is to use road trains. First of all, we will need to upgrade the existing road that runs into Paradise, and we will be sealing that road so we make it all weather, and that road will connect on to the Great Northern Highway. The trucks will travel along there and then along Derby Highway and out to the existing port at Derby, where Ray Resources leases some land and owns the existing conveyor and barge loader that you see out at Derby when you visit there.
So how many trucks a day will that be?
That will vary over the life of the project because we don't produce the same amount of coal at all times in the project. Over the 20 years, we estimate that we will average a little bit below 2 million tonne per year, and so at those times you would require about 55 truckloads a day of coal. At the peak of production, which is for a short period, we may peak at around 2.5 million tonne, and that would require about 72 truckloads to carry that.
Once the coal is transported to port, it will then be stockpiled awaiting shipping, is that correct?
That's correct. We will have a stockpile at the port. It's important to realise that because it is a small port, we will have a fairly small stockpile, only enough for one ship. So we won't have big piles sitting out there for a long time. We will have the trucks transporting the coal. They will produce a stockpile there. A ship will arrive and be loaded, and all of that stockpile will go onto the ship, and then we will start building a new stockpile ready for the next ship.
And that won't have any health effects on the town of Derby?
No, we've looked at that, and we have done modelling of the coal dust. And one of the things that is important to understand is that this coal has a fairly high moisture content. So it is not very dusty unless it is allowed to dry out. So the coal will be transported in trucks that are completely covered, so it'll stay moist while it's being transported by truck, and it'll be moist when it arrives. And then we will also have big sprinklers so that if the surface of the coal starts to dry out in the short time that is there waiting to be shipped, we can wet the surface and stop dust being generated. So we have done very careful modelling that says that dust won't impact upon the environment or upon Derby.
How many ships a year are you estimating there will be?
Well, the number of ships will also vary over the life, but when we talked about a maximum of 2.5 million tonne a year of production, the size of ships that we expect to be carrying this would require about 45 ships per year. So that would be at the peak of production, so less than one a week.
What are the potential risks posed to the land and its biodiversity?
That's a very good question, Dylan, and we've looked at that and done both a lot of studies and also talked to a lot of people. So as you would expect these days from a responsible company, we have undertaken studies of the plants and the animals, of the surface water, of the groundwater, the connections between all of those things. And we have recognised that in an area that receives the monsoonal rain that it does there, that we need to control things so that the runoff doesn't carry anything off the site. So we have put a lot of controls in place in the design of this project to ensure that the waste streams that we generate in mining and processing the coal are controlled, and that all of those wastes are returned into the bottom of the slots that the coal came out of, and that'll be about 50 metres under the ground, and then we cover that all up. So our project has been designed so that it doesn't leave any wastes on the surface when we close that mine, and we can be confident that we leave behind a safe and stable environment.
Will floods affect the operation of the mine?
No, they won't, Dylan, because the location of this mine is actually on a ridge, and I don't know whether you know the area well, but it sits on an elevated area between Hardman Creek, and so it isn't near any river channels, and in terms of rain actually falling directly on the ground and just running across the ground, we will have berms in place. These are low mounds, the same as you see, for example, down at Nookambah or somewhere like that, to control the water so the little bit of surface sheet flow is diverted around the mine and back into the drainage channels the other side of the mine. So we're not proposing to mine in any rivers or streamlines.
How are you planning to avoid air pollution?
There's not a lot of air pollution associated with the project, but we obviously, when it comes to things like our generators, generating our electricity and things like that, they will all be very modern and they will control their emissions, and the same with the trucks. With the trucks that are carrying the coal along the highway, they will all be covered, and also we will put those trucks through a truck wash before they leave the mine site, and again before they leave the port to come back, to make sure if any dust has got out on the outsides of the wheels and the wheel arches and things like that, that gets washed off. So we'll have lots of things in place to prevent dust being generated and carried away.
Are there any more plans to further coal mine in the Kimberley region?
Not that I'm aware of, and I'm very confident of that. Ray has been doing quite a bit of exploration over the years, and we have been slowly examining areas that we thought there might be more coal suitable for mining, and we have been establishing that many of those don't hold quantity of coal at all, or quantities of coal for a mine. So whilst we have found coal in some other areas, we have not yet been able to establish that any of those are suitable for a mine.
And for our final question now, why isn't Ray Resources investing more money into clean, sustainable energy?
That's an excellent question, Dylan, and that's because at the moment that's not the business that Ray is in. There are other companies that do that, and all of us are free, if we buy shares and things like that, to invest in companies that have that as their focus. But Ray's business at the moment is in coal and petroleum, and that's where we're making our investments.
Ian Pound, General Manager for the Duchess Paradise Project, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Dylan.